Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. Look, if you tuned in yesterday, we had set you up for this. Adam Jones coming back to edit, and the day is here. I always love watching people edit, not just to see, which slider goes where, but this is our chance to get inside your head. Adam, you said yesterday there was a term that stuck out to me, massaging an image. And I love that approach to post-processing. We're not retooling, we're not putting on an entire new coat of paint. We're
Right.
massaging the image to get the best out of it, right?
That's exactly right.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to let you do your thing. If you
Okay.
guys do have questions throughout, feel free to drop them in. Adam has opened up the doors if you guys want to make this a little more interactive during. If you have a question on something, sometimes it's better to ask it while he's in the act of doing that process. So
Exactly.
feel free, and then I'll try not to bother you too much, Adam. I'll keep it
There's no
relevant. I'll
bother
keep it on
whatsoever.
task.
Feel free to jump in.
Awesome. Well, I'll let Adam take it away here, and I'll remind all of our viewers the YouTube chat is open and ready if you guys do have any questions.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Adam Jones and happy to be here and happy to entertain any questions that you may have. This is going to start out pretty simple, pretty basic. Just kind of work through my workflow. And just keep in mind that this is the way I do it. There's multiple ways to do all of these things, adjustments in Photoshop, ways to store your images, backup methods, everything. Everybody can conceivably have a little bit different approach. So don't think this is the way to do it necessarily. It's just how I do it. And you got to realize I'm fairly old school. So again, there may be better ways to do some of this, but what I want to start off with just very briefly, just to kind of set the stage is you can look at my messy desktop here. You can see I have three sets of two drives up at the top. So the SSD ones are my latest drives, working my way back. Library one and two are the oldest. Working one and two were the working drives prior to these two. So when I download a memory card, I literally take that folder off the memory card and I drop it into one of these, excuse me, hard drives and put it in whatever folder hierarchy I want. That way, I always know where my images are residing. There's no complications. I don't flub up on an import session through Lightroom or Photo Mechanic or anything else for that matter. The images go directly from the memory card into the hard drive. And at that point, once they are completely loaded up, I'll point Lightroom or Photo Mechanic at that folder and voila, there's my images. So I know you can import them and all of that directly and maybe skip that step. But again, I'm old school. I want to see the images go from that memory card into that drive, and I know they're in there. And all of these drives are automatically backed up from drive one to drive two, blah, 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 down the line. And I actually have three drives in each of these groups, one being offsite, and that's why it's not on there today. So every so often I bring that third drive back in and bring it up to date with ongoing work. So once I have gotten the images in the drive, my go-to software for previewing, culling, deciding which images I'm going to work on is Photo Mechanic. I don't mean to disparage the Adobe products because by and large they're really good, but Bridge to me is incredibly slow. I just can't work with it. With Photo Mechanic, I can literally drop or click on a drive or a folder over here on the right hand side, or all the folders in this hierarchy. I can click on that folder, and if it has 2,000 images in it, they will all be loaded up and ready to work before I can scroll to the bottom of the 2,000 images. It is that quick. It's pulling up the embedded JPEG in your raw image and makes that it doesn't have to build a big preview as Lightroom does. It's way faster at getting the initial images on screen where you can start culling or working on them. So that's one of the big advantages to me of Photo Mechanic. Sports Illustrated uses Photo Mechanic on Super Bowl Sunday to go through 50,000 images in that afternoon. So that should tell you something when they're going through a massive quantity of images quickly. Okay, so this is the interface in Photo Mechanic. And as you can see, I got my thumbnails, looks a lot like Lightroom or Bridge. So I can go through here and I can compare images. I can look at this penguin versus that one, see which one's sharpest, which one I want. You can see I've marked this one with a magenta highlight below it to say that's the one I'm interested in. So if I don't want an image, I can hit the T key to put a little tag or check mark at the bottom. So I can literally scroll through here and mark all of the images with a T or that check mark that I want to completely delete off of my disk, off of the hard drive. And once let's go pick a couple more. I'll do it over here on this side. Let's say I don't want this image. And I don't want that image. So they all have a check mark on them. I can go up here and sort this by the ones that are tagged. So now they're all there together. Hit Command A, they're all selected. Command Delete, and they are gone. They will be taken off the drive and thrown into the trash. So that's my culling process through Photo Mechanic. And I love this program. I just don't think I can do without it. So that's how we get started there. So let's just open a raw image and do a little basic work on it here. So here's our raw image in Adobe Camera Raw. And before you get started with this, just a couple little basic suggestions. By default, these little boxes or little squares up here are not on. I like to turn those on by clicking them. And if I take the exposure up too high, I get this red overlay showing me wherever anything is blown out. So I like that a lot. This little square on this side is for the blacks. If I go too dark, I get blue overlay showing me where I have clipping with no detail on the blacks and or the whites. So we want to keep a sharp eye on what's going on with our brights and our darks, because we can pretty much adjust everything else in between, but to me, the endpoints are extremely critical. You can hit your, let's do a couple other things here. Move on down. I would highly suggest that you turn on your remove chromatic aberration under the optics panel and use profile corrections. And if you watch that ever so slightly, this telephoto lens doesn't have a lot of correction to it, but some wide angle lenses bow in or bow out quite a bit when you check or uncheck that. So I keep that on when I'm doing it, and you pull up a profile for your lens and all of that good stuff in your camera. You can, another thing when you're in Adobe Camera Raw is I would make sure to click on this little line at the bottom. And let's make sure that you're either on Adobe Camera Raw 1990 or Adobe RGB 1998, I'm sorry, or Pro Photo RGB. I go with Pro Photo RGB because it's the largest color space, gives you the most crayons in your coloring box, and I make sure that I'm on 16 bits per channel. In the old days, Photoshop's RAW was not set this way by default. I think it may be now, but definitely double check that. Make sure. Okay, now we're ready to kind of get with it here. You can click the auto button. Sometimes it does a miraculously good job. Other times I think it's just horrendous. So it's really going to be up to the individual image, which way you go. I don't think it did a bad job on this one. So we got all these sliders to us, and there's just a huge amount of things that we can do in here. Does that mean we need to touch them all? Well, not necessarily. So let's just reset everything. Just take it from scratch. I'm going to push my highlights up a little bit, just kind of to where I like it. And I'm going to push the whites up until I get like the brightest pixels in the photo. Up here in this upper left-hand corner, you see the red overlay. Well, guess what we have down here is a little targeted adjust toggle sampler overlay. So we're going to click this eyedropper, and I'm going to put a sampler right there. So I can watch the whites. That's the brightest part of my photo. I want to be able to watch that throughout my editing process. And you see that the red overlay goes away at about 253, 254, 254, these little numbers right here. So 255 is the absolute end of your histogram on the right-hand side, your brights. You shouldn't be that bright. That's not printable on hardly any printing device. So on my highlights, I like to keep them back at about 248 or 249 on the highest number. So right about there, my blue is at 248, green's 247, and red is at 245. Now that means we've got a slight blue bias because it's the highest number. So I can take my white balance eyedropper right here, click in this little circle, and now it's 248, 248, 248, completely neutral white background. So that's one way to get your color balance perfect on the highlights. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. We're going to back up just a smidge. So what I'm trying to do just at the very beginning is establish my white point and my black point. And I did that by making sure this was turned on, this for the blacks, this for the whites. So then I'm going to take my whites up till I get the brightest pixels in the image, and they're up here in the upper left-hand corner where my cursor is. And you can see at that point, the readout is 255, 255, 255. To me, that's too bright. That's not printable on any device, and we need to fix that, in my opinion. So I'm going to bring this down to about 248 or 249. Somewhere right in there is my brightest tones. And this marker will remain there throughout the entire processing in Adobe Camera Raw, because as you make other changes, those numbers may change and we may have to come back and readjust them before we come out of the raw interface here. So that establishes my brights. Now I'm going to do just the reverse with the blacks. I'm going to push them downward until I get this blue overlay showing up. So I'm going to put a marker right there. Oops. It's all right. Wrong marker. And we're going to put, well, shoot. Why does that not let me do that? There we go. Well, no, it's not doing it. Got to get off of that. Well, that's embarrassing. Why is it not letting me put a marker there? I wonder if it's because we just cancel out of this for a second. We're going to fire that back up. All right, we're going to find the whites. Right. Well, it's a different spot this time. All right, so we are going down here with our marker. We're going to put it there. We're going to bring I'm actually going to color balance off of that white. So I'm going to, let's not do it this time. Let's leave it alone. So we're going to bring that down to 248 on the blue channel, 249. That's close enough. Now I'm going to take the blacks down until we get the overlay on the face. And now we'll put a marker there. There we go. Our second marker for our blacks, and you can see they are indeed at 0, meaning there is no detail in those blacks whatsoever. So I'm going to push those guys up to about 8 to 10, somewhere in that range right there. So that is my basic processing. We can, what we want to do now is keep an eye on those as we do other things, but you can brighten this photo up down here on your curves, which a lot of people don't use. And we're not really changing the values much. And if we do, we can pull them up or down right here to reset those back to where we want them. So I'm adding some contrast with that, the curve there. So that's all I'm really going to do at this stage. Right now, I'm going to go into the masking dialog, which is over here on the right-hand vertical set of icons. Going to click the little round circle. And just for those that use Lightroom, this is all basically the same in Lightroom, a different interface, different layout. but you can do all of these same things. So right now I'm going to pick my subject. And now and this is pretty much the way I do everything. Like if I'm doing a landscape, I'm going to work on the sky separately from the land in most cases. And it's the same with wildlife. I'm going to work on the wildlife, the animal, the bird, whatever it might be, individually to maximize it to the best we can do, and then worry about the background or the sky separately. So I feel like we need to open those shadows up some more on this guy. Maybe add in a little bit more contrast, perhaps a little more warmth or not. Yeah, just a little bit more. It looks a little green on my screen, so I'm going to put a little magenta in there. So now we're working on just our penguin. And at this point, what I like to do is now we're going to jump over. That's all I'm going to do to this guy. I don't think it needs much more than this. I'm going to select my mask. And this is what I think is really exciting about the new changes and relatively new changes in Photoshop or Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom both, is that we can duplicate and invert this mask. And now I've got my background selected. And what I like to do, and I do this a lot, is I like to merge this selection, intersect this mask with a linear gradient. It's already selected the entire background, leaving the penguin out. Now with the linear gradient, I can put a gradient on this selection, and I can change, obviously, the exposure in the background to whatever I want. But one of my tricks is to take the temperature down and you get this transition of color, and it just seems to add a little bit more depth to the photograph for me. See, I can pull this up or down once I've made my adjustment. And now it looks like there's more distant blue background, like going out to the ocean maybe. And we can carry this one step further. We can go back and do another mask. We're going to select the background, and we're going to intersect that with the linear gradient again, only this time we're going to come up from the bottom. And I'm going to make this the opposite direction in the color tone. I'm going to make it warmer. So we can get this nice, looks like the beach maybe down here at the bottom, a little warmer. And again, you can move your selection around after the fact. And you can change the saturation on this, whatever you want to do, the dehaze, woo, crazy. You can change the saturation if you want a little bit more, and it's not affecting the penguin. It's just the selection on that gradient minus the subject. So that would be my basic workflow on this penguin for this particular shot. So we're in our masking interface, and multiple ways to select all kinds of things. You can select the subject, you can select sky, background, objects. We'll do an object in a few minutes. You can select people, which I don't do much of. You can use the brush to physically paint in the areas you want and have that with a guided auto masking feature turned on. You can do color range, pick certain colors in the image and it'll select those. You can do all these changes to that, and or luminance ranges. You can pick the lights or the darks and work on those areas selectively. And to me, that's the key on all of this, is not just go into the first page of sliders and globally adjust everything. What I want to do is, I'm a control freak. I want to take control of the image and work on it in sections, like the sky versus the foreground or the penguin versus its out of focus background. So to me, that's where all the magic comes in, is being able to make selections via these masks or other ways in Photoshop, and applying controlled adjustments just specifically where you want them, to certain tones, certain colors, certain areas, dodging and burning. All of these things can really massage the image into something a lot nicer than what originally appeared in your raw format. So, I mean, you can work on a picture ad nauseum, and it sometimes comes down to when do you quit, and that's really a personal decision. Some people like to really get into it and work it. Others want to get in and out of it as fast as they can. And believe me, I understand that. So let's click out of the masking selection for now. And that's these three little squiggly lines up here. We're going to go back to our original interface. And another powerful tool that we can use is this color mixer, your hue, saturation, and luminance values here. So if I pick saturation as it is now, click on this little selective targeted tool, I can come over here and put it on this color, this orange, and I can change the saturation of just that orange. Now you can see it's not exactly perfectly selecting only this orange. This is close enough in color that it's affecting that as well. So I'll come over here and move to well, it's still seeing it as that, but I take the yellows up or down a little bit, but use that, and like these blues back here, we can make that more saturated if we wanted, or less, whatever you want to do. You can use luminance and make that lighter and darker via your selection. Brighten that up a little bit, brighten that up a little bit. And it's a powerful tool. I use that quite a bit. The downside to it is exactly what we just saw. This color orange is so close to this orangey yellow that it is adjusting both of them. If I'm going to have a problem with that, my workaround would be to hit open, take this into Photoshop, duplicate the layer, then adjust one of these colors to the way I want it, and then erase it off via a layer mask on the color that I did not want to be affected. So that would be my workaround on that. Anybody have any questions on anything at this point? I mean, we could go for a week on all the possibilities here. Anybody got a question at this point?
No, I do have a comment though, Adam. It's like,
Okay.
thank you for showing me. I all this stuff at my fingertips, like all the little marks, putting the little marks here and there and the little tools that they've added. I
Right.
did not know you could. I've been doing things the old tedious way. So if you were to stop right now, I've already learned a ton from the process with just
Well,
doing that.
awesome. Cool. Cool beans. So from this point, we would just hit open and your raw image is now in Photoshop, where we have our layers and masks and a whole lot more things available to us than we can do in just Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom. Not to disparage either one, because they're amazing programs and extremely powerful. But Photoshop itself goes way beyond that. Just for a quick example of what we could do here, this is a relatively new tool found under the lasso tool. We click that, we get this selection brush, and this is relatively new. This used to be a multi-step process to do this, but now we can do it very easily. I'm going to take this brush and I'm just going to paint a selection. And not at 17% opacity, I'm going to do it at 100%. And I'm using my bracket keys on the keyboard to change the size of my brush. So I'm just going to paint this eyeball in, just kind of quick and dirty. And once you have a painting or a selection on that, becomes a selection. And these are your adjustments available in Photoshop. If this palette's not visible when you're working in Photoshop, go up to Window, come down to Adjustments, and click that little arrow check mark there, because all of these are powerful and they put everything on as a layer mask. So we have this painted in. I just want to do brightness and contrast to this eyeball. So I'm going to click this. And look how slick that works. Now we have a brightness contrast adjustment layer with a mask that's only going to allow it to adjust what we painted. So I can fix that eyeball, make it a lot brighter, make it a lot more visible. So there's before and there's after. And the great thing about this mask, a lot of folks don't realize, is once you have a mask on here in your layers palette, if I hold down the command or control key on a PC and click this, you get this little hand with a box. Guess what I can do? Now I can go here and reuse that exact same mask on a different adjustment. So now I've got the hue and saturation, and it's only going to affect the eyeball because it's bound by this mask. Black hides, white reveals. So the only place that's white on this mask is the little area I painted on the eyeball. So with that adjustment, we can add some hue and saturation to it. You know, I don't want to go crazy here, but I'm doing it heavy just so you can see it on screen. And that's really the basis for how I work. I do almost everything on a layer mask. I'm a big TK Actions fan, which I am not going to go into today. We could go down a rabbit hole for a week on just that. And we just don't have that much time. But this would be my basic approach to this particular piece of wildlife imagery. And I would, unlike a lot of the Photoshop gurus online, they're telling you don't ever flatten the image at the end. You need all those layers because you may want to come back and adjust it at a later time. And it's not incorrect, but I find I hardly ever do that. So why do I want to add all these additional layers that just add up and make your storage space enormous? So I'm going to hit Command Shift E to flatten that. And let's just do a little tiny bit of cleanup here. And this has been a great addition here with the remove tool. Spot healing brush used to be my go-to tool, but now the remove tool does a spectacular job. I can adjust my brush once again with my bracket keys. These little pieces of dandruff or whatever he's got going on here, we can just remove those, just click them, and it gets rid of it. Maybe that little white spot there. And if you had any dust spots floating around outside here in the background, I would certainly take those out at this time. And I would call that done. Hit Command S for save. I'm going to save everything as a TIFF, not a PDF, I'm sorry, not a PSD file, Photoshop file believer. I like the TIFF. It's pretty much universally readable anywhere. I hit save and I have my TIFF. And I'm going to close this and we're going to go back to Photo Mechanic, and it pops up right next to the raw that I created it from with the same number on it. And one of the things I failed to mention is when I bring all these images up, my initial 2,000 images we started with, let's say, I renumber them all. You'll notice these don't look like the normal camera numbers. I hate those big underscore A, this, that, and the other. So I always rename my numbers when I'm in here, and that's easy peasy to do. You can do it on import and Lightroom and everything else. I realize that too. But that's the way I like to do it. So let's do something. Any questions before we move on to something else? Is that
Nothing right now.
pretty easy stuff?
Pretty
All
easy.
right. Well, let's take a different approach here. So here's our Colorado from about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And again, we can hit the auto button and it may do a spectacular job. And that honestly is not bad. I'm not going to do it that way though. I'm going to do it where I have more control and I don't have to undo what it has done. So I'm going to start this processing with a mask. I'm going to go right. I'm not going to do anything else to this other than I'm going to make sure that my remove chromatic aberration and the profile corrections is turned on. And you can see it's using the Canon RF 100 to 500 and the camera. Okay, so before I do anything, I'm just going to start making some masks. I'm going to click on this. Yeah, I've already played with this one, obviously. I'm going to create a new mask. And I want to select the sky. I'm going to show you a little trick on this. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that completely or not, but if we zoom in on this, you can see that that sky selection is way down into the mountain range here. Can everybody, I know you can't answer me, but
Yeah.
let's,
Yeah. We can see it
you,
bleeding
you
into
can
the
see it.
mountains
Okay,
now.
good. So here's a little hack or workaround to fix that. So here's our mask right here. We go to these three little dots. We're going to, I'm sorry, we don't go there yet. We go to subtract. And guess what we're going to subtract from this? We're going to subtract the sky again. So we're going to select sky. And wow, we lost our sky, but guess what we have here? We have the little fringe that we don't want. So we come down to our second mask that it just made, sky 2, and we invert this. Now look how clean that selection is. There's nothing down into the mountains. It's not bleeding down. So if I darken the sky significantly, my mountains aren't going with it. So that's what I would do there. I would start off with the sky, work on your exposure, whatever you want. Push the highlights up first, pull the whites up till I get my blowout. I'm just going to back off to right about there. Put my little marker on it. So we know where we are on our brightest pixels in the sky. Oh, you got to be on your mask or it's not going to work. There we go. Well, which one is it? Got these old ones in there. It's this guy. You got to be on that. There we go. Now we're going to bring the whites down. And you look at the bottom number, it's the highest one. So I want that at 248. I don't want anything brighter in my picture than 248, 249. Okay, so now that we have our sky mask, we can do some cool things with that. We're going to duplicate and invert it so that we have everything but the sky. And you can see there's still a little bit bleeding out around here into the sky. So I'm going to subtract the sky from that and look how it cleaned that up. Now we got a nice clean selection. So I'm going to go in here and add a little contrast and open up the shadows. And once again, I want to find the whites in here. See how they're blowing out on the edges of the white aspens there. I'm not going to put the markers in every time we do this, but in the real world, I would. So I'm going to bring that down to that's well out of there. So that's our shadows a little bit. We can come down to our curve and maybe put a little more mid-tone in it. Somewhere about there. And let's get out of the masks. Well, let's not get out of the mask just yet. So I don't like this bright road right here. So we're going to create another mask and we're going to use select objects. And I'm just going to roughly paint this in quick and dirty and let it select that for me. So there's your road. So once that selection is made, I can obviously use the exposure slider, but that's going to darken everything that is selected pretty much evenly. I don't necessarily want to really concern more about this corner up in the front, and that's your highlights. So I'm going to take those down and the whites down, maybe even open the shadows a little bit to not darken it too far back into the forest. Maybe just a smidge of that. And now I've got the road where I want it. You can warm the road up, cool the road down, however you want it to look with the simple selections. And from this point, I would just jump back into out of the masks, go back to my HSL slider and work on the individual colors. If I wanted to maybe tone those, the luminance of these really bright yellow greens up here might darken those a smidge. You can change the hue if you want. This is totally, you can make it a lot more orange. It's all your call. We can make the sky a little bluer. That's not saturation. Take the sky up or down, but don't overdo the skies. That's just a kiss of death and just screams amateurish processing. And believe me, I know because I've done it a million times when I shouldn't have. And again, from here, and this is where we differ from Lightroom. In Lightroom, you would be done. It saves an XMP file sidecar that follows your image around, and it'll rebuild the way you've set this up. But if not using Lightroom, going through Adobe Camera Raw, you got to open this up and save it, and it's a big file. This is out of the R5 Mark II, and it's a 256 megabyte file. But I think that's a real nice amount of processing on that without a whole lot of work. Once you're used to adding and subtracting and inverting your masks, you can do probably 90% of everything you need to do to an image right in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom. So I find it's just amazingly powerful, and it's kind of fun to do it where you have more control and you're not trying to adjust these silly sliders to save the sky but not blow out the trees in the bottom or vice versa. Now you've got just great control with beautiful selections. Any questions on anything? Everybody good?
Everyone is good so far.
All right, I'm going to close this guy up, and I would just save it and save it as a TIFF as we did before. All right. How are we doing on time? What are we? About 45 minutes in. Okay, it's longer than I thought. Let's look at my workflow for higher ISO images. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm shooting more higher ISO landscapes than ever before. And my go-to software for this is DxO Lab 8. And I'm just going to literally take this raw image, drag it into the processing tray in DxO Lab, and it'll pop up. And as you can see, it's underexposed a bit, and that is the kiss of death on higher ISO images. You do not want to underexpose. This was shot at 12,800 ISO. So I'm just going to make a quick exposure change here, just brighten it up some. Get it within the normal range. And you've got all these sliders that look similar to Lightroom and Photoshop. I don't do a whole lot here. I've got all the automatic optical corrections done that the same as Photoshop and Lightroom would do. Got your color section here where you can change the temperature, blah, 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 all that good stuff. And I've got it set on wide gamut color space. And here's where the magic happens. This is your denoising options. You got 4 options here, and I usually use the top one or the one next to it. If it's a real high ISO like we have now, I consider that pretty high ISO. I'm going to use the best processing it has. The default on the luminance, and that's the strength of your denoising. And I think I can say this with pretty great confidence. As I move this slider to the right, I don't see it degrading the image at all like in most softwares. It just keeps taking more and more noise out, and the sharpness seems to remain there. It's like magic. I don't know how to explain it, but it's amazingly good. I have lens softness compensation turned on, and that is set up to compensate for whatever softness your lens has. And man, I tell you, in the corners of some wide angles, it is shockingly better, more improved, sharper than they ever looked without it. And I'm taking the chromatic aberration out automatically and purple fringing. And I let it do its own default unsharpening, which I think is spectacular. It just does not overdo it. It looks natural. It's clean and sharp. So I'm going to hit export. You can export this back to the original folder or anywhere you want to send it in your computer. I send it back as a DNG with all corrections applied. And that way, when it comes back, uh, Photoshop will treat it as if it was an original RAW, and it just happens to have no noise in it now. Because, you know, a 12,800 ISO image is going to be pretty noisy. And it takes about 12 to 15 seconds per image to get this done. If you drop back to the second level, second highest level of denoising, it takes about 6 seconds. And it'll populate in here and update into Adobe Camera Raw. I'm sorry, into Photo Mechanic, and I can double click that, and we are right in Adobe Camera Raw. So there's your 12,800 ISO, zero noise in the background. That's where you typically see it, is in your smooth out of focus backgrounds. The sharpening looks perfectly real. No halos, no artifacts, no crazy artifacts in the smooth out of focus background areas. So that would be my workflow on a higher ISO landscape. And almost all of my wildlife goes through DxO because I rarely shoot that below 1600 ISO. So I would do the same workflow we've done in the past, but let me show you one more neat little trick with the using the linear gradient again in our masks. Let's say we have the leopard the way we really want it. We're going to select the background. Then my favorite tool, I'd have to say I probably use more than anything, is this linear gradient. Oops, I want to come down to intersect my mask with the linear gradient, pulling down from the top. You see, I pretty much don't have the leopard selected, but there's a little bit here on his chin. So I'm going to subtract with a brush, and the brush can have auto masking on or off. If it's off, it will erase everything you touch without any smartness to it. Or we can leave that on with a feathered edge, and it will calculate with reasonable accuracy and make that selection a lot nicer without you having to paint just super duper precise. There we go. So one of the things I use a lot on my wildlife, in addition to changing the color tone of the background, just changing the exposure slightly pulls your main subject forward. So look how his attention gets focused more on the animal with just a slight darkening of the background, not much at all. It's 0.15 of a stop on the slider. And I would do this again if it were me. I would do the, create new mask. Let's do the background again. And let's intersect that with the linear gradient. Let's bring it in from this direction. We'll darken it up just a little bit down here too. And one of the things I like to do is take the contrast out of this, which makes it lighter, which seems counterintuitive. Take the shadows up, take the blacks up, make it soft and nighttime like, and then redarken it, and it just kind of goes away. It looks like it's in just total shade. And at this point, I would just select my subject. And we need to add a little bit to this because we're missing the leg here. So I'm going to add with a brush. And I'm going to leave the auto masking on. And see, I'm not painting that perfectly, and it's doing a pretty darn good job. Now I'm going to subtract with a brush. Get it out of there. So clean up your mask. Don't, when they first pop up, they look like, oh, golly, it's unbelievably perfect. And well, a little bit closer inspection, they're not always perfect. So again, if I move the exposure slider, it brightens every pixel that's selected, which may or may not be what we want to do. I always start with the shadows and get those up first, add a little contrast, maybe a little more exposure. And now we've got this image where we want it or where I want it. Very simple techniques that really make it look like this cat almost had a little bit of spotlighting on him. And this was shot well after the sun was below the horizon at 12,800 or 500, whatever. What is that? 12.8. So we can open it if you want. I would save it just as before, and it'll come back as a TIFF. All right. I mean, that's my basic workflow. Again, we could get into crazy masking and luminance masks, color masks, all of that in Photoshop, but that's a whole could go for a week on just that. But
I love that it's a simple approach, Adam. I think a lot of times, I know I feel you have all this stuff there. I have the sliders, I have the curves, and I feel like I have to use it. It's like we have this ingrained thing in our head that okay, well every image needs some, and it's like no, well that's the whole point of getting it right in camera. Well, we
right,
don't need to go
right.
that route.
Let me show you one other, just a quick, dirty little technique. This is an offshoot of a more complicated way to do this that I do on a flat image. So this is just a horrifically overcast day, nothing really happening light-wise whatsoever. And I've grown to really enjoy these days because there's so much that can be done with them very simply. Now, this is in Photoshop. This is a small 12 megabyte file just for educational purposes, but I'm going to show you a quick and dirty way to bring this image to life and with nothing more than using the lasso tool. Actually, I'm going to take them so I can hold down the Option key and subtract from that selection. All right, then I'm going to draw another one. So I hold down the Shift key to add to it, and I'm going to draw another line. Let's just bring that in about like that. So now I've got this really extremely crude selection on screen. So the key here is we need to feather this selection. So we go up under select because we're dealing with a selection. And then we're going to go to modify and we're going to go to feather. I don't want to feather it 2 pixels. I want to do about 100. And this is a crapshoot for me because I normally do this on a full res file, and that feather radius will vary greatly from a low res file to a higher res file. So there's our selection. Now remember these adjustment tools we saw earlier. So we've got a selection. All we got to do to use a layer mask on an adjustment layer is come over here and pick something. So I'm going to use levels, something real simple. So if you look into your properties panel here where my cursor is, you'll see that all the information is on the dark side of the histogram. So watch us turn the lights on this image. It looks like the sun just came out. Nothing more than a crude selection that we feathered the edge. And remember, we talked about how you can reuse this mask by holding down the command on a Mac or control on a PC, click it, then go pick something else off of this list. Let's add brightness and contrast this time. And I really want contrast. You know what? It still needs something else. It needs warm morning light. So let's click this mask again and let's go to our photo filter. I happen to prefer the 81A look, and now I just added warm light to that look. So there's the view with nothing. There it is with the light we just added. So I would take this one step further. I would come over here, maybe more than one step, but let's just say, you know what? This end of this barn needed some light as well. So we just repeat the process. So we're going to go to select. We're going to go to modify. We're going to go to feather. And I'm going to, since that's a small selection on a low res image, I'm going to probably feather that only about 35 pixels. And this is the guess. Hit OK. I'm going to do the exact same operation again. I'm going to go to levels and watch that barn come alive over there. Then I'm going to do the same thing, repeat the mask, go to brightness and contrast, add some contrast, maybe a little more brightness. Let's use it again and add in our photo filter. Sometimes I use selective color on this. It just depends on what mood I'm in, really. Well, there you go. And at the final stage, I would go up to select sky. This was a bracketed image for an HDR because that's why the foreground was underexposed. I was trying to hold the sky. So I'm actually going to, we have our selection on screen. I'm going to select and I'm going to feather this as well. Modify feather, but only a couple pixels, like 2 pixels. Just so you don't have a hard jagged edge. And now I'm going to go to my curves and just do a basic bring the sky alive. So there's where we started. I love overcast days now. This technique is so simple. You can
Adam, was
bring
there something
light.
like how did you choose that area? Was there something that you could see from being there or you knew it was the right? I always worry if I were to do anything like this, it wouldn't look real. It'd be like one of those images where it's like, wait, hold on. The areas that are lit don't match where the sun is coming from, or
Well, yeah, you definitely want to take all that into consideration. But on this shot, there is no real direction to the light on the ground. So I can be in control of where it comes in. And on my Caddo Lake tour, we had lots of overcast or pre-dawn shooting in the trees. I could bring the light in from any angle I wanted. Little bit more complicated process than this, but essentially gets you to the same spot. It's just shockingly fun to take a dull, bland image and turn it into a well-lit masterpiece, if you will. Not that this is a masterful shot, but the technique is extremely useful.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if I would have only seen the after, it's like you wouldn't. I guess that's a successful edit there. If you see the
Yeah, I don't
after and
think
you're like
anyone
nothing,
would go.
yeah, like
Yeah,
no suspicion is around. No, you wouldn't think that that was enhanced at all. It looks
no, and
completely
I mean
natural.
we did this really quick and dirty. I have a more
Mhm.
sophisticated way to do this, but this conveys the concept of what you can do with very simple selections. I mean,
Mhm.
anybody can draw a loop on the screen and then add an adjustment layer to it, I would hope. Just it's super simple.
Mhm. I wanted to ask you about saving the your images. Is there any process that you have or any, I know some people save everything in TIFF, or I know some people that who have a PSD file. If it's an edit, they have a PSD file, a TIFF, and then a JPEG for posting. Do you have any system that you use or any type of file that you prefer?
Well, my system is all TIFF. That's
Okay.
all I save are TIFFs. I don't save the layered files unless it's just some incredibly difficult thing that I don't ever want to repeat in my entire life again.
Hmm.
I've probably got 5 of those in my entire collection, where you just spent hours and hours, masking something out or whatever, which I rarely do that, put that amount of time into it. But it's
Hmm.
all TIFF for me. Again, PSD files are proprietary Photoshop files, which will probably be around for as long as we are, but you never know.
Yeah.
And I just like the TIFF. And you can save layered TIFF files if you want. They'll be probably larger than your layered PSD file.
Hmm. How often do you go super in depth? Are most of your images, are you finding you're just doing the light stuff? Like do you go in, do you play with curves a lot, or is there one
I
tool that
use curves on every image, to be honest.
okay.
I didn't do a whole lot of it today because I do it on certain channels sometimes to change the color balance. I do it with layer masks. Again, with the TK actions, I can set this is what I love about TK actions and others with luminosity masking. I can get my white point, my black point set perfectly, dead on the money. Then I can go in and pick like midtones 3 work on it ad nauseum, do curves, whatever, and it doesn't touch the endpoints on the lights or the dark. So they stay put, and I'm free to adjust everything else, and I have to keep coming back and readjusting the bright and the dark points. And I find it just super liberating.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think I need to add into my process. And I'm wondering how many people out there are the same way. It's like there were certain things that you set the tone on your image with the white point and the black point that I don't do. And it sets you off in the right foot. I feel like that really sets the tone for the entire processing.
Yeah, I think so. And again, once I'm outside of Adobe Camera Raw and in Photoshop, I use TK Action on almost every adjustment I make, in combination with these adjustments that you see here on screen with Photoshop. So, for example, I can pick a color and it picks the color amazingly well. And it's using Photoshop to do it, but it's just the interface is so simple. And let's just say I make a selection of the sky, just for an easy one. And I don't like what it did. I want it to expand or I want it to contract. Again, you can do all that in Photoshop, but you have to be a whiz bang and know where it's all hidden and all the keyboard shortcuts and all that stuff. It's right on a panel on TK Actions. I can hit one button that's got a feather on it. So my brain goes, oh yeah, I need to feather it. And the part that's most useful is I can expand or contract the mask in real time. Watch it do it on screen as I'm making the adjustments.
Wow.
So, I mean, it can get really complicated if you want it to. As you saw today, I think it doesn't have to be overly complicated.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, this was pretty simple stuff that you were doing, just little adjustments here and there. That's why I'd asked. I'm like, I'm looking at some of the stuff and it's like, wow, I'm over here wondering, do I touch the sliders too much? Do I do way too much?
Well,
But
it mainly comes down to me is that all those sliders, for the most part, are too global for my approach. Now that
yeah.
we can do the masking, yeah, maybe touch all the sliders and maybe a little dehaze in distant mountain shots where the landscape off in the distance needs a little dehazing just to kind of take that hazy distant look out a bit, but you don't want to put dehaze in the sky. So I would select my sky, invert it, and just put that dehaze on the mountains and not on the sky because that adds noise.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah, that
another
was
great reason for your mask. If you got a really noisy sky and you don't want to denoise the entire photo, well, just denoise the sky.
yeah, that is what I noticed when you're doing that first image and you went straight to the masking. I like seeing that because different approaches, there are certain images where, yeah, I've noticed I do a universal edit and then I go in and it kind of it's creating more work. Could just go in and just do the mask. So see, these are beneficial. It's beneficial because I
Yeah,
think we get locked in. It becomes almost just we don't even think at a certain point, and it's good to go in and
right,
see someone else's process and learn new things. The intersect, I think, is going to be game changing for me. I didn't even know that was an option to do
right. And
that.
you can do
And
it with everything in there, like that. I don't know if you remember the eagle that you led off the program with that was sitting up at the
yeah,
blackbird uh, while we were waiting to go live. That was an added sky. It was a horrible looking sky, but it's so easy now to drop a different sky in. And point being is that once that sky's in here, you can use there's object selection in regular Photoshop to subtract that sky off of parts of the tree that it got on. So it's just an amazing amount of stuff that can be done.
definitely, definitely. Well, Adam, I want to thank you for taking us through your process. This series has been great.
Thank
Getting
you.
it's from start to finish, getting to see how you go out there and do your thing, getting some wonderful tips, and then it's always good to wrap it up and see what the post processing looks like. So I want to thank you for your time and
Thank
expertise.
you. One last shameless plug, if I may.
Go for it.
We saw some Falkland Island penguins. We have a tour in January, this coming January, with PhotoQuest Adventures. We're going to go to the Falkland Islands, South Georgia Island, and Antarctica, the trifecta of the three best places in that region of the world on a nice ship, not a gigantic one, so it should be really nice. And we only crossed the Passage once, and that's coming home after the trip's over back to Ushuaia in Argentina. So I'd love to have you join us. We will go over this kind of stuff and a whole lot more on this tour. Even though it's a tour, not a workshop, in the evenings we get together and kind of an informal roundtable thing and kick around these ideas and show you some of the ways to polish your images up much further if that's what you want to do.
I
So think
love
about
that.
it. Join us in January.
Wonderful. We'll make sure we get that link dropped in once again. So if you
All right.
guys can check that out, definitely. If you know, one day, I'm putting it on the bucket list. When I'm no longer working, I can take, a nice 3-4 week vacation somewhere,
Yeah,
go
and it
out and
is a 3 week tour.
yeah, I don't think I can stream from there.
Well, sure we can. We can take wires back to the mainland.
There we go. We'll make it work. Adam, huge thank you to you once again.
Thank
And
you. It was
of
my
course, all of our
pleasure.
viewers out there tuning in. We thank you guys for always joining us. We'll drop that link into the YouTube for those interested in checking that out. And otherwise, that's all we got for you for now.
Okay.
Another
Feel free
edition
to
of
reach out to me if you have any questions or want to talk to me personally about anything. It's Adam at adamjonesphoto.com.
There we go. Adam at adamjonesphoto.com. So we got
Correct.
the website. Yeah, we didn't even have you drop socials, website, anything. It's like any other closing. Is there any links we missed, Adam?
Well, you got my Facebook links. We could post up there. I can't get it quickly,
Yeah,
so
we'll have the production team. We got a lovely production team
can
that is
add that
great at
on
pulling
to the
all that
recorded
information up.
area.
There we go. We'll get that dropped into the information on YouTube there. And
Perfect.
check it out. Adam, huge thank you once again to all of
Thank
our
you.
viewers. Thank
Okay,
you.
Derek.
We'll see you next time. B&H Event
Hey.
Space.